I'll introduce the speakers. Luminița Tatarici, Head of Systemic Risk Monitoring, Financial Stability Division, National Bank of Romania. Lara Tasanzanin, Head of the European Investment Bank Group Office in Romania, and Mr. Sergio Prescu, Executive President at Alpha Bank. And with your permission, I'll address the first question to Luminița Tatarici. What measures has the National Bank of Romania adopted to raise awareness of climate risk and green finance? Mrs. Tatarici, please.
Hello, and first of all, thank you for the invitation and for the very interesting talk that I've heard before. And thank you for the question also. I will try to get to all that MBR has done very briefly. I just wanted to highlight that we started actually looking at climate risk, I think in 2019. So we ended up including a special team in our main publication in the Financial Stability Division, in the Financial Stability analysis that we publish. So we wanted to see at that point in time what are the main economic sectors that are that could be potentially affected by transition risk. So we focused on transition risk, that part of climate risk, and we wanted to see what will happen to them if a carbon tax will be imposed. So that was our first approach. Through time, we've tried to refine our methodology. We are looking at what other central banks and prudential authorities are doing worldwide. We have started to move our focus not only looking at the risk, but we wanted to see also the benefits. So in the fall of 2020, we started to a working group that was mandated by the National Committee of Macroprudential Oversight. It was focusing on supporting green finance, and MBR has coordinated this working group. I just want to mention that it was a large working group. So we had a lot of members from the private public sector, also members from the industry, members from credit institutions. And why I wanted to highlight this working group is that there were a lot of analyses conducted during this period when it functioned. So it ended up with a huge report looking at sustainable finance from very different perspectives. What are the risks? What are the benefits? What are the bottlenecks in increasing this green finance? And it ended up also with a recommendation from the National Committee of Macroprudential Oversight, a recommendation that, in our view, it's very comprehensive. It covers a lot of public institutions that actually have a say and can do something in improving the national strategy in moving towards a greener economy with less emissions. And after this recommendation, we improved our work in the National Bank. And what we have done afterwards was to publish a climate dashboard where we cover a lot of indicators and we look at climate risk from different perspectives. What is happening in the economy with the CO2 emissions? What are the main physical risks for the Romanian economy? What is the transition risk? What are the bank's exposure to this type of sectors? And actually, the figures are not very very good in our perspective, because somewhere around 50% of bank exposures are towards these climate policy relevant sectors. And another thing that we have done following this recommendation was to ask credit institution to report to the Central Credit Register the information they have on the green loans that they are actually financing. And we don't expect this definition that we use to be comprehensive. We just saw it as a first step, as you've mentioned before, to raise awareness among banks that this is actually a sector that they could focus on. There are a lot of opportunities in terms of green financing, but while also taking into account that this type of lending should be sustainable in the prudential sense, not only in the sustainable by taking into account the ESG factors. And what I want to finish with, and it is not related specifically to the National Bank, but it's related to a discussion that we've heard previously. What to do to have a national strategy to move closer to a greener economy, how to develop an industrial policy that actually is it's focusing on climate agenda, how to identify the competitive firms that could have a contribution to this agenda and that are competitive to develop nationally the goods that we need to go through this process, the green transition, in an orderly manner. So these are actually open points. You've asked the question on what would be the best strategy to reach that point, and in our view, it's a growing field. It's full of opportunities, but we also think that risk from a prudential perspective should be taken into account. So briefly, that was the main activities that we've done in the central bank.
Again about national strategy that we spoke before, and it's a necessity. Really interesting information that should be spread to everybody. Thank you so much, Mrs. Tatarici. Question for Mr. Sergiu Prescu. What is the role of the definition of green credits? So what is the role of the definition of green credits from the institutional, banking, and business perspectives? Mr. Sergiu Prescu, if you're so kind.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much. It's an honor to participate at this conference. I think this is a very important question because, frankly speaking, what is green should be understood in the same way by all the stakeholders and should be easily verifiable by all stakeholders. Therefore, the definition and the taxonomy should be clear and standardized as much as possible at the level of the European Union. There are many reasons for which this, what we call the taxonomy alignment, should be done. But what we know for sure is that any delays in this alignment will impact the speed of the green transition. I think that we are already living in a world where we started to identify, if I may say so, 50 shades of green at this moment. It's something that you see from one jurisdiction to another, that various stakeholders are looking at it from a different angle, and we need this kind of standardization. For banks, the application of the green definition designs by itself the activity involved in the processing of the credit applications, and therefore the internal lending cycle, if you think about it. If the implementation of the definition is cumbersome, the time to yes and the time to cash of a green credit will be longer and probably more costly, even when you compare that with a normal credit. So you are, by definition, losing the advantage that otherwise you would want to bring to the market through a green product. The result of such a delay is the slow build-up of green credit stocks, the portfolios of green credits, which in turn will delay the possibility of issuing green bonds, because here I want to link it also to the funding side of the green products. And the possibility of issuing green bonds is an important element in the ecosystem that we are trying to build here. Because let's not forget that for the green transition, we are trying to create what we call a virtuous circle or cycle. Which is, in different words, we want to create a positive ecosystem whereby consumers will benefit from better rates and better valuation. Investors will benefit from financing greener assets and help the transition. And lenders will benefit from better and more valuable collaterals at the end of the day, while customers will have better disposable income or more disposable income. This is indeed a virtuous cycle that we want to lend to. For example, with the occasion of issuance of green bonds, if the green definition is not clear, then convincing investors who contemplate investing in green assets is going to become much more difficult. For investors, an ambiguous definition of green implies a whole range of shades of green and the impossibility to distinguish between them. And therefore, they will not be able to benchmark one issuance from another. That will make confusion, and that will, you will lose on the pricing advantage that otherwise you will be commanding through this kind of green issuances. So I think that's an important element, because you are losing on the funding price advantage that even the lenders, even the banks will have to rely on in order to pass through to the customers a better pricing proposition in case of a green asset. It is good that we have the EU green taxonomy, and that is something that has already been decided upon, and it has been regulated. But its implementation will require an integrated platform that will be accessible to all stakeholders. And this is something that has to be built on public relevant data in each jurisdiction. So that we will be able to roll it out in all the jurisdictions, and this is an element of concern for the time being at the level of the banking industry. An example, and I want to talk here in my capacity as vice chairman of the European Mortgage Federation. An example is for stimulating the demand for energy renovation of buildings is the Energy Efficient Mortgage Initiative, EEMI, which was launched by the European Mortgage Federation a couple of years ago, which brings together a wide range of relevant market players. And this is important because it creates the ecosystem that I was referring a little bit earlier. It includes lenders, it includes investors, it includes the SMEs that are providing services, and also it includes the utilities providers. This initiative aligns strategies and actions through a market mechanism, which is focused on a green range of products, services and data, and delivers the concept of a one-stop shop. And that is very important at European Union level. This is something that we will be looking at transposing to other jurisdictions at the level of the European Union for the time being.
Thank you so much, Mr. Oprescu. Mrs. Lara Tassan, what is the role of the European Investment Bank in Romania, and how it is involved in promoting and supporting projects related to sustainability?
Thank you very much, Mircea, and thank you for the organizer and to Venere and the Banking Association for having organized this meeting today. I will try to be concise because we are doing so much that because less is more. I will try to focus on few elements. So, the EIB, the European Investment Bank, as the Bank of the EU and the Climate Bank, of course, as sustainability and green projects high in the priority, we are committed to finance 50% of all our funding every year to green projects, and all our projects have to be Paris aligned. So basically carbon neutral. And this is easy to say, but very difficult to achieve. In that sense, so we are very, very concentrated, very focused in preparing, promoting projects that are eligible for us. I don't know how many of the people around the table are aware. We are a public bank, not pursuing profit, but pursuing public policy goals. Among those, of course, environment, but also SME support, infrastructure, and innovation. With that in mind, we are still demand-driven. We support both public sector and private sector. In Romania, we lend around 1.5 billion euro a year, heavily split between public and private sector, depending a bit on the years and on the crisis that we are facing, and we faced many crises in the recent years.
That's a support banking.
Yes, and one third of this support goes in Romania to SMEs via commercial banks. I mean, and so it's very important to say that what we try to achieve in Romania in the green transition, it's both supporting with lending the public sector, so the central government, but also municipalities, which we believe are one of the biggest drivers for the green transition in Romania. The second support is directly to companies. And the third is indeed supporting SME via banks, via commercial banks with which we partner. Now, this is not only about money, and particularly in Romania, is even less about money in the sense that funds are available, not only from us, but also from the EU. We are facing an unprecedented amount of funds exactly focused on favoring the green transition and a just green transition and a fair green transition. So in case of Romania, in addition to the usual structural funds programming, we have the modernization fund, the resilience and recovery fund, the just transition mechanism, and now what is going to come, Repower EU. So even additional funds on this. Having said that, funds availability is not an issue, but in Romania, what is more of an issue is having enough projects, enough green projects, well prepared and implementable on time, on budget. This is where we are also focused in providing advisory. We have in Romania one of the largest offices of the EIB in the world, not made of bankers, as someone would expect, but made of engineers and economists that are helping the Romanian counterparts to prepare projects and advance on their green agenda. More and more, we will be focused on green. For example, one example is we have supported Transgas and their grid for many years. Now, since we became the climate bank, gas is not eligible anymore for us, but we are offering advisory to Transgas to devise their decarbonization strategy. So to provide Transgas with a tool that would allow them to borrow more money either from us or from...
You provide expertise in this case, from what I understood, yes?
In this case, only expertise, but to enable further lending in the future, not only from us, but also from other lenders, and particularly, I would say, from other lenders. Because what is happening in the market is that not only us, but also the banks, and we have heard Sergio, but also other banks, are indeed, they have their own ESG targets to reach, their own environment, social and governance targets, and therefore they are looking more dynamically and attentively to green projects and to support green investments in the private sector and also in small and medium municipalities. So we are also, for example, offering a special, going to the private sector, a special clean tech advisory. If you have an innovative idea, we truly believe that innovation will speed up the green transition, and the green transition is a new narrative to stimulate the European innovation capital. But we need support to support this groundbreaking technology to become bankable and viable. So wherever we have innovative leads in terms of producing or developing new clean technologies, we have a special advisor to support that. So two big dimensions. One, it's the lending, it's the money, but the second one is the expertise. And when we talk about green transition and sustainability, I would say it is very important to say, like we heard also from Venere and from Alpha Bank, it's a moving target. We are still trying to assess the risks and to find new methodologies, for example, to assess the climate risk, to factor in when we talk about credit risk. We are still, I mean, when we talk about decarbonization strategies, there is still quite a virgin environment where we are also trying to build a certain knowledge and to cross-fertilize our exposure to different markets in different parts of Europe. But also in terms.
Sorry. So if I well understood, you act like an independent entity, but like an aggregator, and you address three fields: institutional banking and business field. Perhaps not in the same proportion, but you address all of them. Please just confirm.
Yeah, in a short answer,
phrase.
I would say yes. I mean, I would say we are as systemic as it can be, because particularly in these markets that are still developing and getting to a certain let's say maturity, you need to interact and with many different stakeholders. I will just conclude what I was saying, that it's very important to understand when we talk about green investment that there is a lot as a groundbreaking, and still there is no, let's say, no pre-cooked methodology, for example, to calculate the CO2 emissions. These are important factors when we think about financing. And I will conclude on what we are doing in Romania. For example, we are trying to support banks to support green and digital investments, and now we do that. Banks in Romania are relatively liquid. They, in this moment, although the conditions of the market are changing since the interest rates are growing, but basically they don't need funding, but they need more guarantee instruments to mitigate the risk associated to these green investments. And the EIB group is managing 1.2 billion euro out of the PNRR to set up equity instruments, a debt guarantee instrument, to somehow
to achieve the goals. To achieve the goals, actually, at the end.
Yes, to allow banks to mitigate their the risk that they perceive in supporting green investments. Certainly, there is in the banking sector, in the institutions, in the market, a great alignment to converge towards a green transition. But we need to equip these stakeholders with different instruments to allow them to really make this potential real. And one specific aspect is that these projects are not necessarily, let me say, easy to assess from banks. And when they are not easy to assess because they are either innovative or let me say, too risky, we need to have instruments in place that are mitigating this risk. They are offering a first loss piece to banks to allow them to reduce their perceived risk and still finance this kind of projects. Last but not least, we believe one element that is very important, and I think it was mentioned by Sergio, and I'm very happy to hear it. It's music for our ears. It's about energy efficiency. In Romania, there is a huge need to consume less and consume better, both from households and corporates. And we are working, we are very proud of, so we are in contact as an example of interaction with banks, with institutions, and with the market on energy efficiency, Mircea. We are discussing with Venere in the context that Luminica mentioned, how we can, let me say, incentivize loans to households to have more energy efficiency investments in houses and apartments, owned by the Romanian citizens in Bucharest and of course beyond Bucharest. We are at the same time discussing with the regional development agencies to set up an investment fund for energy efficiency investments using regional operation program resources. And we are trying to somehow to provide specific advisory to companies to identify the best energy efficiency investments they can do to remain competitive while progressing on their green journey.
Also, Mr. Valentin Laza addressed this subject related to saving energy. So it's a really important subject, not only for Romania, but for European Union and worldwide, I can say. Thank you so much, Lara. A new question for Luminița Tatarici. What is the evolution of green banking financing and the areas towards which private financing has been oriented? Please, Luminița, if you are so kind.
Yes, thank you for the question. So I'm glad to speak after after Lara.
Difficult.
It's difficult indeed,
Yes.
and I think that in the previous intervention, some of the bottlenecks were already mentioned. So
yes, we're touched.
So lack of expertise, the need for data, the need for well-prepared consultants in the banks. Briefly. So yes. What we think actually is that banks should play an active role. And this is what Mr. Laza also mentioned, an active role in supporting the clients, because we see the need for them to understand better what would be the means for, if we look at the non-financial companies, what would be the best means for them to actually decarbonize their activities. And I will touch briefly also on what we see the level of preparedness among firms. But in what concerns banks and what we have seen from the data that we've gathered from them on green loans, it's actually not what we expected, given all the talks surrounding the green lending and the need for private intervention, private funding, and not relying only on the public funds. So what we've seen, it's it's something like 6.2 billion lei of green loans granted to both households and non-financial companies, and this accounts for below 2% of the total stock of loans in the private sector, which in comparing to what's happening and the effervescence of green lending, it's a bit low. It's growing. It's a bit low. We expected if we look on the composition of this green lending, and if we look what we've seen, that it's an important need for financing for firms, the green lending to firms. What we see is that the majority of loans were granted to green buildings, which probably it's understandable given the increase in developing the new building apartments and so on and so forth, which actually can be situated in this category. This is followed by energy efficiency, and this leads me to the previous discussion on the need for energy efficiency, and this is actually a point in the section that it's important for both firms but also for the households. And I totally agree with what Lara mentioned, the need to actually be aware on where the future will go and the need to consume less and more efficient. But what actually it's a bit striking in our view is the share of loans granted to firms for new technologies, because we've talked before about the need to produce internally to cover the deficits. And I'm very glad that the agri-food deficit was also bring into the discussion, and it's something that the National Committee of Macroprudential Oversight was actually looking at a couple of years before, and that work was also ended in a recommendation for the public authorities, but the progress seems to be very, very low in addressing this issue. So this share of loans for financing new technologies that could actually help us to deal better with the green transition, it's 2.5% of the loans that were granted starting last May. So it's a bit low. We understand that there is a need for more information, for more data that banks need from the clients. I would be very curious to find out what are the bottlenecks behind this type of development. So I think that would be all from my side.
Thank you so much, Luminița. In this context mentioned by previous speakers, but especially in the context mentioned by Mr. Sergiu Prescu, what are the interlinks? I mean, interdependence relationships between institutions, the banking system, and the business environment in the context of achievement the same objectives related to the transition for a green economy. Lara, if you can tell us more about this subject, please.
Yes. I think that another example that I already mentioned is guarantee products that, in our opinion, are really what is needed. They were a bit delayed, and although we really work very hard to bring them to the market, it seems that we are about to have them to sign. We have now selected the banks, and because it's based on an expression of interest call, and we will sign, and the products will be available in the market starting Q3. Why I re-highlight and repeat this is because it's very important that we hear the numbers that Luminița from Venere just presented. So if we look last year, only 2% were green loans to households and non-financial. And in our case, for example, we supported green energy with 17 billion euro worldwide, and only 70 million came to Romania. This is below the average of the usual, let's say, slice of the cake that Romania benefits from our lending. So we did lend an important amount of money, but it went not necessarily on green projects. So we want to address this. Clearly, there is a need of incentives and a need of setting up an ecosystem that incentivizes and focused on this. The second aspect that we are trying to deploy or to develop is we were involved with advisory in this case with the Ministry of Energy to speed up the assignment to the private sector of the PNRR grants for energy efficiency, hydrogen and cogeneration coals. We also are in talks to advise the Minister of Energy on the Energy Efficiency National Fund that they are supposed to set up under the PNRR. It's a milestone. And last but not least, we are in talks with the colleagues in the Ministry of Finance working on setting up the National Development Bank of Romania, which is also a milestone of PNRR. We really see this as an opportunity, and there is a need in the market to not only so to devise incentives about real incentives on green finance, the guarantee products, as I mentioned, the possibility to have a mortgage or loans with favorable terms in case it is for energy efficiency investments or according to the EU taxonomy in case of municipalities. But we have to do a quantum leap in trying to structure all these subsidies in a coherent way that is understandable and understood by the market. Currently, some of the calls of these EU funds are going void, or there are less demand. There is less demand, less applications. The envelope, the financial envelope available. And this is not because there is no need. This is not because there are not enough corporates willing to invest on this, but sometimes it's also a matter of too many let's say, calls from different authorities, not necessarily coordinated, similar but not the same. So we are really looking forward as next step in the quantum leap to, let's say, use, like in other EU countries, the opportunity of the National Development Bank of Romania to see this as an umbrella structure for many of these type of investment funds that are currently now being set up with the PNRR money, but with the idea that in future they will be refinanced and will have a new life under this umbrella of the National Development Bank. I think that is very important in the next step to have the market in mind and the possible beneficiaries. We don't just need to produce calls one after the other. We need to allow the market to understand why this instrument, why this call, how can I complement these grants with the loans from the banks, how we can and where it's needed a certain type of advisory. I think if I can, let's say, put a proposal here, I think this is the next challenge for Romania to be a bit more beneficiary driven and market driven when we try to support the green transition, particularly having the grants in mind, and of course then the IFI loans and the lending support from commercial banks. Otherwise, we run the risk to be not only energy inefficient but system inefficient, and I think this is a momentum that cannot be missed. And we are doing our part in talking to the different stakeholders and trying to convey this message and have a converging, I would say, direction for all these efforts that are being currently made under the green transition label.
Thank you so much, Lara. Pretty clear, the interlinks. We know that the strongest of a chain depends of the strength of the each link. Actually, the strongest is it's in direct connection with each link. In this case, I'd like to ask Luminița again, what is the level of preparedness of non-financial companies regarding the climate risks? So Luminița, please focus on preparedness of non-financial companies, if you can, please.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. I will rely on a questionnaire that we've done last year. It was a questionnaire regarding climate risk, and it was addressed to non-financial firms. It was, I think, 12,000 firms that we included in our questionnaire. It's something that we do biannually, and last year we focused on this topic, on climate risk. Because we understood from the discussion that we have with relevant counterparties, with banks and other participants at the working group that I've mentioned, that data is actually a huge problem, data gaps. So one of the data gaps that we were trying to cover was to see whether these firms are able to calculate their own carbon footprint, whether they understand the risk that climate is posing to their businesses, and so on and so forth. So we constructed this questionnaire under technical support instrument that we are benefiting from. We focused on three parts. First, the firm ability to deal with the energy cost increases that they've seen in the previous years. Then we looked at how the firms perceive this climate risk, and then we asked them by providing a support to calculate their own carbon footprint. And I mean, the results are not very striking. Large companies are better prepared to face this risk compared to the SMEs, and this was actually a point that we wanted to reach, because in the context of all the discussions on the reporting framework for non-financial indicators, it will be much more cumbersome for small and medium enterprises to actually report on that information, and for some of them actually they don't have the information. They don't have the they do not have the specific. They don't have specific prepared personnel to deal with this aspect. So what we've seen, it's like 70% of the firms, they don't have this type of personnel. They don't, 50% of the firms that responded to us, they don't even intend to hire the appropriate employees to be able to evaluate the risk, to be able to come with proposals to mitigate this risk, and when the time will come to even report the information that they are required to. So I was mentioning that large firms were better prepared. How we've seen that from the sample of the firms that we had, only I think below 60% of the small and medium enterprises responded to us, while the large companies responded in a larger number. It was above 80%. We've seen that the majority of firms, if I can say that, something like 70%, they don't do investments related, any type of investments or investments related to climate risk. So the first step was to acknowledge there is a problem. The second one would be to think of a strategy and maybe think of the appropriate investments. An improvement that we have seen is that the number of firms that started to do some investments related to climate increased, because we asked them before this question. I don't want to bore you with a lot of numbers and percentages and something like that.
Each idea from in this conference, I suppose that are really proposal for a strategy, because everybody are talking about strategy and strategies. Exactly. And the necessity of strategies, and I think some ideas can be collected and can be implemented. Thank you so much, Luminița, for your presentation.
No problem. No problem. I just wanted to add one
please.
One aspect, because it's related to the previous talks on energy efficiency. And actually, what is interesting from the question here is that one of the most targeted measure by the firms, even if we know that they are not understanding that well all the risks that are coming from this climate change and climate transition and physical risk, it was related to energy efficiency. So this is the first point. Again, the energy efficiency. So most of the firms are looking at these aspects, whether they understand the whole chain of implications or not. So that was what I wanted to add. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I thank you. I thank to you, and I'll ask Sergio to explain to us or to tell us if the cost of the transition must be fairly distributed, and in this context, will a green transition be inclusive? Sergio, please, if you can share with us.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing here is that we need to understand that, you know, the cost of transition should be fairly distributed across segments. The transition to net zero, the climate neutrality, as we call it, must be fair, must be equitable distributed.
It's a must. It's a must.
Yeah, a must, because otherwise. And here I want to link it to something that I wanted to say a little bit earlier. You know, there are three main challenges that we have in front of us when we are talking about the green transition, one way or another. The first one is about the lack of information available, and I think to a certain extent was addressed a little bit by the other speakers. The second one, which is equally important and also a very important topic, and I don't think it has been very well addressed, is the customer perception or what we call the behavior bias of the consumer at the end of the day, or what I want to call the energy efficiency literacy. Because frankly speaking, the customers, they have to buy in the concept in order for us to be able to create that positive ecosystem that I was referring to a little bit earlier. And the third challenge that we need to address, and to a certain extent I have addressed it at the beginning of my speech, is the lack of standardized approach, the various number of shades of green that we see, which in certain cases it may be a possibility for greenwashing, frankly speaking, and that's something that we need to avoid at all times and with any cost at this moment. So that's something that we have to pay attention to, so that we do not pretend that we are doing something when in fact we are not doing it. That's the definition of the greenwashing. But coming back to your question, whether the cost of transition must be fairly distributed, I think that it is a must, and it has to be dealt with in that way. And here we have to distinguish between the transition of the brown sectors, or the sectors that have an increase in their carbon tax, or the assets that need to be replenished or need to be changed, do not benefit of the new green technologies that do exist at this moment, and therefore the investment in replacing and replenishing these assets is going to be quite significant. Then we need to put in place some sort of an incentive or support scheme coming from the government, coming from the public sector. Because otherwise, in the absence of such a support system, the transition is going to be not equitable distributed, as I said, across the economy landscape. And we need to pay attention to that, because that could lead to various stakeholders undermining the overall scope and project and the destination of the green transition. So we need to pay attention to that. And therefore, I think in my mind that should be long-term renovation strategies. I want to refer a little bit, or I wanted to refer a little bit earlier to what we call the big renovation wave, which is something that is going to take place over the next period of time. Because as we all know, and if we want to put it into the context, the buildings at the level of the European Union, they contribute for 40%, and this is a study that has been published recently. They contribute to 40% of the energy consumption at the level of the European Union, and they are responsible for 36% of the total CO2 emissions at the level of the European Union. So we need to pay a lot of attention to the renovation segment of these buildings, because they are quite significant in the overall strategy of green transition. And that, even in the context of Romania, the figures are even worse. I mean, frankly speaking, we have 77% of all our buildings that need to be renovated over the next period of time until 2015. We do have approximately 500 million square meters of buildings that need to be renovated, representing the 77% that I was referring to. We understand at this moment that the renovation wave that is going to come is going to be significant, even in, as I said, in case of Romania, because a significant part of these buildings, they have more than 50 years of existence. So therefore, they have to be in the front line of this renovation wave that we are talking about.
Yes.
As I said, we need
really
to put
proposal.
We need to put in place this kind of support schemes for those who are either employed or representing, or private sector that are representing at this moment the brown sector.
Thank you so much, Sergio. And for Lara, very shortly, please, Lara, from your point of view, what are the social, economic, and security costs that will have be paid by Romanian and the European Union in the short, medium, and long term, in the transition process towards to a green economy? Your ideas, Lara, please.
Well, it's not so much for us to say or to identify the cost, because somehow the European Union already sketched where the costs are going to be and devised the programs and support for that. One for all, for example, that is partly addressing what Sergio was mentioning, but that is not sufficiently known. It's the Just Transition Mechanism. So over 2 billion for Romania in terms of grants, both for private sector and public sector, loans for private and loans for public sector, that will target 6 counties in Romania that are more affected by the transition from emission-intensive industry towards a low carbon emission economy. Which are the costs in this case? They are very clear. There are social costs of many people being made redundant. There are other costs linked to the fact that their electricity bill will go up. They might not be able to access funding to invest in their properties to consume less and consume better. They might not be aware of or get an explanation why green energy is better, although it costs more. We don't have to forget that in Romania, the energy cost was traditionally and historically very low for a reason or another. This as a situation has completely changed last year, and although to a certain extent last year was exceptional because it was, as we know, a reaction to the shock coming from the military aggression to Ukraine, what is clear is that the energy costs in Romania, with or without the green energy factor in, the energy costs are going to remain higher than before. Therefore, it is also a problem of the population and the companies. But I would say the companies, they have already ways to detect it because they see their margin eroding, they see their revenues eroding. And so we have seen last year from our survey and from our facilities that we have with the banks, that Romanian companies reacted very quickly to move into investing in energy efficient equipment. And so they were quite agile and fast reacting. So that part of the market and of the economy, Romanian economy, worry us less. It's much more about households and population to be aware that this cost will not go back to let's say, February 22 levels. Particularly if we factor in green energy, the costs are going to remain higher. And why higher? Because there is a long-term benefit of Romania, of the whole Europe and the globe in having less CO2 emissions and overall a greener planet. So somehow there is an education there to be put in place, and I don't expect this to be a short but rather long process, or let's say medium process. Now, having said that, there are instruments like the Just Transition Mechanism that are already available to address this cost. It's about reskilling and upskilling people. It's about preparing the next labor force to be ready to take up green jobs, green profiles, to watch that space in the market, because there is an increasing expected demand for green jobs and green profiles. And one of the main reasons why investments are not, let's say, the green investments in particular, developing as fast as the market would require, is because there is uncertainty on availability of skilled labor force. So we have a great opportunity here to translate a cost into let's say a benefit, an advantage, because Romania has a big role to play in terms of providing skilled labor force to be used in Romania and in the region. Now, let's say that the instruments are there. The reality is, though, that I think that I mean, the ecosystem is far from seeing this as an opportunity, but they are rather still in shock of what happened and trying to understand what is in there. And you can see that from this just transition mechanism, underutilization, if you want to say. I invited the participants to check if they are available online, the just transition industrial plans that they were developed by these 6 counties, Mureș, Prahova, Gorj, I mean, Doj, they are the Galați as well. So they, this was a great opportunity for both public sector and private sector to address these costs, both social and economic. And let me say that we didn't see a big project wave coming over. We didn't see, let me say, a long list of projects, bankable, viable. At least we didn't see what we would have been like to see, and because we were ready to support combining loans with grants and advisory. Now, this doesn't mean that the game is over. We will remain focused, but it's very important and committed. But it's very important that everybody believes that there are already instruments to address these costs. We just need to have and ensure the information is circulating and reaching. But also, we have met many times the counties, the municipalities, the regional development agencies in these 6 counties. And in fact, there is a project origination capacity that is still lacking, and maybe also a bit of vision in how to make this green transition an opportunity rather than a cost for Romania and for some areas of Romania more than others.
Thank you so much, Lara. And because Mr. Sergiu Prescu mentioned the renovation wave, I want to ask him what he believed about the cost of financing of the renovation, the big renovation wave. So the cost of financing.
Yeah, as I said, this is big, and this is coming. It comes at the level of the European Union.
Actually, it's here. It's not
here
coming.
already,
It's here.
yes, it is here already. It comes at the level, as I said, of the European Union. I mean, 40% energy consumption, 36% CO2 emission, 75% of all the buildings at the level of the European Union need to be renovated over the next decades. So this is huge. That's why it's being referred to at the level of EU as being the big renovation wave. If you do the numbers, and if you think that, you know, for an uplift of 1 notch on the energy scale, you need approximately, according to international studies, you need approximately 25,000 to 30,000 euros for an uplift of 1 notch. Then you understand the amount of money that has to be deployed in order to fund this big renovation wave over the next period of time. There are European commissioners that have come public with figures that, you know, we'll have to renovate I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of buildings on a monthly basis in order to be able to carry on the entire renovation wave at the level of the European Union. But now trying to particularize it and put it in the context of Romania, of course we need, and there are studies even at our level that, you know, the renovation wave for Romania, it will probably cost somewhere between 12, 13 billion euros to 30 billion euros, depending on how many notches we need to uplift. But here we are falling back to what I was saying earlier, that, you know, you need available and publicly available, and you need data. You need to be able to gather data about the quality of the buildings, the energy certificates that we have for these buildings in Romania. And that is something that it's a process which is ongoing on one hand. On the other hand, it's not complete. So we need to pay attention to it as well. I think that if I'm looking that, you know, 1 notch may cost in Europe 25 to 30,000, and considering the difference between the purchasing power standards between Romania and Europe, and so on and so forth, you could approximate at this moment that probably in the case of Romania, we will be having a smaller amount per one notch uplift. But even with a smaller amount, we will still need 2 or maybe more notches to be funded in order to go through a full transition towards a net zero destination. So there are indications in the market that with this kind of deployment of funds, first of all, the banking system in Romania, in my opinion, it has the available liquidity, it has the available capital in order to play a significant role in the whole thing. So the banking system per se will play its role. But we need to put that in the context of the ecosystem that I was referring to earlier. You need to come up with the right SMEs and the companies that will play a significant role in this renovation wave. Then you need to come up with the investors base. You need to be able to issue green bonds that will fund this kind of deployment of capital and credit for this wave. It is a humongous effort that we have in front of us, and we all need to play our role in the whole sort of context. The regulator on one hand, the banking system on the other hand, the other stakeholders that should participate in the whole process, they will have to play their role. The most important thing is one element that I think Lara touched upon a little bit earlier, is that we need to create a positive, how should I say it, a positive momentum, so that people buy into it, and we'll be able to understand, all of us, that this is going to evolve as an ecosystem and as a business transition, frankly speaking. So we have to understand the merits of the green transition, and people should buy into that and benefit out of it. Because on one hand, there are a lot of opportunities in the whole process. There are opportunities for customers, there are opportunities for lenders, there are opportunities for investors. We just need to create the right mix in order to be able to have a positive
and to see the opportunities,
and to be able to identify the opportunity.
Yes.
And not only to identify, as I said, I mean, for us, it may be an opportunity, but you need to explain it, and you need to explain it in certain layman terms, so that people will be able to buy into it. So that's the behavior bias that I was referring to a little bit earlier.
Understand. Thank you so much, Sergio. Some questions from public for our guests. What are the bank position regarding or related to Startup Nation program? One is this one question, and about the education financing project, education financing programs. Another question, and the third one, the opinion regard to the sustainability reporting standard are being developed by the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group, and one idea related to this question. Another question is how will impact the new directive European Bank Authority ABA from ASG area in the next period, in very next period, the retail market segments. And these are some questions. If somebody, one speaker or one guest, to answer to one of all these questions, please feel free yourself to do it.
Okay, maybe I can take the one that was addressed to to AIB. I understand the new directive, meaning the energy efficiency directive, or I'm not sure I understood which directive they refer to.
Actually, the question is for you, Lara.
Yes,
Which is your opinion with regard to the sustainability reporting standards are being developed by the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group. Which is your opinion with regard to the reporting standards that are being developed? So
yeah, but I also would like to understand. I would like to understand the second one, and then I will reply to both. The one on the directive and the ESG and the retail sector.
Regarding ESG, it's for Sergio. How will impact the new directive? EBA, European from ESG area in the very near period, the retail segments market.
Okay, so this
in transition to a green economy.
Okay, I'm not sure this second was for Sergio or for me. Anyway,
it's for Sergio, but anyhow,
no, fine. If it is for Sergio, I'm happy to leave it. I understood it was EIB. So for the reporting standards, as I said before, on decarbonization strategies, on CO2 emission methodologies, it has to be clear that these are moving targets, and therefore any request in terms of sustainability reporting, it's the start of the journey. And in that sense, it might be what we see today might not be the final result in the years to come, because we are learning the way to do. It's very important to understand this. It's not, when we talk about green transition, reporting, governance, it's more a moving target than anything else that we have seen in the recent years. And therefore, with such agility, we have to watch this space. Having said that, we believe that what is going under sustainability reporting, ESG reporting, can only benefit, and I say benefit, Romania, although now it is perceived as a burden because it requires a huge improvement, a huge deepening of the reporting and the standards and the collection of data and the elaboration of data. One of the big, let me say, limiting factors for Romania's economy to have a quantum leap, also thinking about the ecosystem that we have heard before, is that not only, let's say, banks are readier to go on green investments and are getting geared up with guarantee products, with advisory, with the consideration that we heard on climate risk, but they need bankable projects and bankable companies. And the reality of Romania is that 5 years ago, 1 out of 10 SMEs were bankable. Today, 2 out of 10 SMEs are bankable. The trend is positive, but it's still rather slow. Why they are not bankable? Because they are undercapitalized, because they are not willing to increase transparency, reporting, and governance. What we see is that this ESG wave, the green transition, the sustainability wave, the ESG wave, is actually increasing the willingness and the understanding of companies that they have to raise their standards of reporting and transparency, because otherwise they would fail, let's say, to remain competitive. And I also would add that thinking about the customer experience, more and more in Romania, through our surveys, we see that customers are willing to invest on green, are willing to buy green products, are willing to buy from a company with green processes, with transparency, with monitoring, with governance. So basically, the corporates will have to gear up and have a quantum leap in terms of reporting, no matter what the directive will say, no matter what the standards will say, because this will be benefiting their business. They will become more bankable and more applicable for banks. They will be chosen more by their customers in this kind of vicious, positive, virtuous circle. I truly believe I'm in Romania since 5 years, and somebody told me, Romania will only change where there are external pressure, obliging the country, the economy to change. Well, this I perceive it's an external pressure in a certain way to increase the standards in reporting, in transparency and governance, and particularly on the sustainability angle, that will be extremely beneficial for Romanian economy, for making it more resilient and sustainable. And the sooner the companies will buy into it, from the very small to the big ones. The big ones are already on the path to, of course. The faster will be the growth of a sustainable and resilient Romanian economy, making this market very competitive, both Europe and towards the Eastern markets.
Thank you so much, Lara. Mr. Oprescu, if you want to add something, just
to refer to that question that was addressed about the new EBA directives with regards to ESG and how this is going to impact the retail market over the next period of time. I think that the most important thing is that the banks should gear up their readiness to launch green products in this segment. So this is on the product segment. I think that this is going to be a significant impact immediately, because we are going to see, and to a large extent we have already seen that. I mean, most of the banks in the top tier in the Romanian market, they do have green products. They do promote green products. There is even a price differentiation between the green products and brown products in the Romanian market. So we are providing the incentives in order to create that kind of buy-in sentiment at the level of the consumers. But we also have to pay attention to other ways in which we can create that stimulus in the market. And we need to lower the transaction costs for the green product. We need to address the lack of data challenge that I was referring to a little bit earlier. We need to provide customer guidance and advice, so that finally the customer is going to be able to choose between the various offers that exist in the market. We have to avoid the greenwashing, as I was saying earlier. So it will have an impact. In my opinion, the impact will be positive, and it is an implicit opportunity in the way in which the regulation works on the green transition at this moment. I mean, the early birds, in between inverted quotes, both on the customer front and on actually, let me put it this way, on the supply side and on the demand side, both the early birds will stand to benefit out of this green transition. So the more educated you are in order to understand what's happening, the better the financial literacy you have in order to understand how to take advantage of this new wave, which you have to ride, frankly speaking, in a positive way over the next period of time, the better off you will be at the end of the day. You will be better off because you are going to live in a better house. You are going to live in a house that is going to preserve value over time, rather than other houses that are going to destroy value over time, and so on and so forth. You need to invest in it in order to preserve and in order to ride the wave, as I was saying earlier. I think having said that, I think that this regulatory wave which is coming our way on ESG matters, in essence, of course, and I agree here 100% with Lara, it shouldn't be perceived as being a burden. It shouldn't be perceived at this moment as being something that we need, because there are two approaches to it. You can look at it and say, I want to comply, and you play a defense type of strategy, and you tick the boxes and you say, I comply with it, or you take advantage of the opportunity that is being created by this regulatory framework right now. And I think that most of the banks, they are understanding that. We also want to see that at the level of the other stakeholders that should be created in this ecosystem, SMEs. And I know that there are some companies listed on the stock exchange that are doing this kind of how do you call them, solar panels to be installed. They are booming. I mean, this kind of business right now, it has continuous demand. You see that they have a positive momentum, and you see that they are booming from a commercial point of view. They should stand as examples for the others in order to take advantage of this opportunity that is created by the regulatory wave.
Really interesting topics and really interesting information. Before the transition to the third panel, I want to say thank you to all participants and to our special guests, Luminița Tatarici, Head of Systemic Risk Monitoring, Financial Stability Division, National Bank of Romania, Lara Tasanzanin, Head of the European Investment Bank Group Office in Romania, and Mr. Sergiu Prescu, Executive President at Alpha Bank Romania.